there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York. It's a nice but very chilly morning here, and we are on the East Coast for our discussion today. My guest is in Washington, D.C., I believe, and her magic lies in the intersection of culture, science, and business. Her passion for helping individuals connect to their cultural identity has secured her a solid place in history as the co-founder of African Ancestry Incorporated. That's AfricanAncestry.com, which is a pioneer for a new way of tracing African lineages using genetics and a new marketplace for people of African descent looking to trace their roots more accurately and reliably. She travels the world helping people demystify their roots and inform on identities so that they may better understand who they are by knowing where they are from. With a career that spans nearly 30 years, she has become the go-to expert on DNA-based ancestry tracing for people of African descent. Dr. Gina Paige, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So as always, we get started with my question, where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
Well, genetically, I'm from the Fulani people in Nigeria. Locally, I'm in Washington, D.C., home of the late great godfather of go-go, Mr. Chuck Brown.
Okay.
And my craft is helping people make their dreams come true.
Oh, that's lovely. I like that. That's awesome. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about growing up in DC. You mentioned go-go. So a young girl from DC, and I lived in DC. That was where so fun fact for you folks, Gina is a Stanford alum, as I am, and that's kind of how we made this connection. And so after I finished university, I went on to do Teach for America in DC. And so I lived in Silver Spring. I call it Upper Northwest, kind of, sort of, but I lived in Silver Spring, and then I discovered that lovely go-go. So tell us a little bit more about growing up in DC and how you became this global person that you are.
Well, growing up in DC definitely informed how I view myself, so my identity, and how I view the world. When I grew up in DC, it was a predominantly Black city. It was Chocolate City. And so I grew up the friend of friends whose parents were doctors and lawyers and political figures, professors. You know, I saw a solid Black middle class. And I said the friend of friends, but my parents as well. So I was familiar with a solid Black middle class, that there's nothing Black people can't do. We have Black mayors, Black leadership, Black businesses. And so that's really how I view myself and how I view the world, is that Black people run things, and we are the originator of all things. And so as that, we need to celebrate who we are, and we need to remain connected to the global African diaspora. There's no us and them as far as I'm concerned. It's a we.
So I'm the daughter of immigrants. And so I grew up in Colorado. And so I never felt that us and we, but that is a reality for a lot of Black Americans versus African or Caribbean Americans that immigrate. So that being able to say, you know, and that's by design and sometimes just by assimilation patterns where you have families that want, and I think your experience in DC, having a solid middle class and it being a city kind of similar to living in Africa, right? So living in Africa, everything's Black, you know, there are no limitations. So it's just like, I could do this, I can do that, you know, whatever, what have you. So thinking about that concept, so did it ever start to occur to you at some point in your life?
That there's a division, a separation between Africans and African Americans?
Or us and them, right?
Us and them. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I can't remember growing up thinking that there was a division. I grew up understanding that there wasn't this kind of, I guess, a global African culture. I didn't necessarily, until maybe I was late in high school really think about the fact that there are differences between, Senegalese culture and Ghanaian culture and,
Mm-hmm.
Kenyan culture, but grew up certainly knowing that there was an African culture, which sounds kind of silly to say now, but that was the
Mm-hmm.
past. But I didn't firsthand experience an us and them. But yeah, I can't say that I firsthand experienced it until later.
Okay, right. Mm-hmm.
Until going to college, until being an adult and seeing the misconceptions and the negative stereotypes. Well, actually, you know what? When I think about the stereotypes, Florence, I was aware of those as a kid, but it wasn't
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
firsthand,
mean, because
but
that's what
I
I grew
cert
up. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I didn't
yeah.
experience it like seeing African neighbors and them being mistreated, but I certainly was well aware of the negative stereotypes and that they were negative stereotypes.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and I would say, yeah, so I understood it and, it melted away slowly. And I think that a lot of us, tried as hard as we could to be American, but we go home and we're eating, banku fufu, jollof rice, all those things. So, but yeah, there were the African derogatory comments and things like that. So I was just wondering if that churned in your head growing up at all and kind of maybe in the subconscious kind of fed into your, we are one. So we're going to get there somehow, some way.
Well,
Yeah.
I did my junior year abroad, most of my junior year abroad at Stanford. I went to study and tour in France, and
Okay.
all of
Mhm.
my friends were African or from the French West Indies.
Okay.
And so when I came home the summer of after my junior year, I actually did a DC Dakar Sister Cities exchange, and I went to Dakar,
Okay.
Senegal for the summer,
Uh-huh.
supposedly to work, but turned out all I did was hang out and chill with my friends. But that's not a problem when you're a junior in college.
Right? It's not.
Uh,
I'm not mad at
but
it.
remember coming out of the airport, driving out of the airport in Dakar and seeing people carrying things on their heads, women
Uh-huh.
carrying things
Mhm.
on their heads, and being completely shocked because I thought that was a negative stereotype. I didn't think that that really existed. I thought we were just being told that, that this was how it was and that it was a bad thing instead of just that it was a way of life. Isn't that
Mm.
weird?
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. That's very interesting.
So I did, I think there was some subconscious stuff going on there. I didn't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
what was real and what wasn't.
Right. 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 So was your travels during university your first time going abroad?
No, it was my first time traveling to the continent. It wasn't my first time traveling abroad.
Oh, okay. So let's take you from DC to where you went next. So you somehow there are some technical machinations that kind of created the Gina that we're seeing today. So tell us more about how you planned your journey and plotted your path to becoming the woman you are today.
Well, that's a really easy question. That might be the easiest question you asked me today.
Okay.
I didn't
Okay.
have a plan. there was there was zero plan.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I feel embarrassed because I really did not have a plan. Like at Stanford, I didn't even know about the career planning and placement center. I had no idea what I was going to do when I left college. Zero plan, Florence. Zero. Even starting African ancestry, there wasn't really. I didn't write a business plan. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead. So I was very organic. I know that now. I know that word. I was very organic. I just studied what I thought was interesting, what I thought would be fun, and I should say, and what was practical. So I got a degree in economics, but I just kind of fell into that and graduated, didn't have a job, a career trajectory, and ended up back home where I then started doing things that were interesting to me. So I started a business that was a care package delivery service because we didn't have those at Stanford. So I did that with a friend here in DC. And that really got me thinking about business and coming up with product ideas and how do you convince people to buy your product. And I also did some sports marketing. And through the
Mm.
course of that, I realized that I needed to, I couldn't live off my parents forever. And I had this Stanford degree. I couldn't be like, I don't know. So I started looking at people who had jobs that I thought I'd be interested in. And they tended to be advertising and marketing positions.
Uh-huh.
And all of those people had MBAs. So I was like, okay, well, then I'll go get an MBA. I'm dabbling in business. These people have MBAs. And so I went to the University of Michigan thinking that I would do advertising,
Mm-hmm.
University of Michigan Business School. But there, the focus really wasn't on advertising. Advertising was sort of a stepchild. And so I allowed myself to get herded, if you will, into product management, which actually was a good thing
Mm.
because that kicked off my career in product management at companies like Colgate Palmolive, which is Colgate toothpaste, Palmolive dish liquid, and then
Mm-hmm.
Sara Lee Bakery, and learning how to manage a business, learning how to understand a profit and loss statement, learning how to be responsible for production and promotion and planning, that thing that I'm not the best at. And that really made me desire to own my own business and work for myself. And that's probably what was the motivational trigger that got me started
Mm.
to in pursuing the idea of pursuing entrepreneurship as a lifestyle or as a career.
You said something really interesting in terms of product management being kind of the catapult for you to move into managing and being an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of times, people don't really know what product management really is. So can you tell us a little bit more about the intricacies of being a product manager and what that is?
Yeah, sure. So back in the day, I don't know what it's like now, Florence, but too many years ago, the product manager was really the product management function in a company was the business management. So it was the hub for making sure that, or not making sure, it was the hub for developing or creating the product, working with R&D, research and development, to bring the product to life, working with marketing and advertising to make sure that there was a positioning and messaging that worked for the product. Certainly working with research to make sure that you understood your consumer and their needs, working with sales, working with finance, and working with production. So you really were responsible for all elements of the marketing mix, but also the business mix to make sure that the product went from conception to, in this case, the shelf on the grocery store, in the grocery store aisle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. That's a great summary. And so we can absolutely see how that kind of training definitely puts you in a position to understand how to develop, run, manage, implement on your own business.
Yeah, until you do it for yourself. And then you're like, wait a minute.
Right, 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 right.
I didn't learn this.
Yeah, yeah. So let me take a little bit of a veer. And I usually ask this question kind of why the where. And you mentioned where you're from and you gave the Fulani background as well as the DC background. Can you give us a little bit of genealogy? So how did your family come to be living, working and playing where you are or where they are?
So my parents are Howard University alumni.
Okay.
And so that's how they ended up in DC. They both got to DC from Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my mother's side of the family got to Philly from Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Mm.
And then I think that the lines before that came from Georgia and Florida and Virginia. On my father's side, they got to Philadelphia. My grandparents got to Philadelphia from Bluefield, Virginia. And so, Virginia, we have deep roots. The Paige and Saunders lineages have deep roots in Virginia.
Okay. Okay. So kind of southeast and east
Mm-hmm.
coast is
Mm-hmm.
your most recent lineage. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. And what part of DC are you in?
So I live in Northeast DC.
Okay. So my school was on the border. I taught at Paul Junior High School, which was
I
at,
went to Paul Junior High School.
oh my goodness.
I sure did. I went to Paul for seventh grade.
I was a seventh grade science teacher. That is so
Wow.
funny. Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
the chances?
Yeah. What are the
And
chances?
I drive past Paul every day that I go to our office space. I
Hmm.
drive past. I live very close to where Paul is. That's funny.
Okay. Okay. I love that neighborhood. That's why I was like, yeah, it's right on the edge. So
Mm-hmm,
nice.
mm-hmm.
Okay. The dots are
I
connecting.
know. Wow.
Okay. All right. So speaking of speaking, I'm just going to go straight into this question, which is my Glocal speak. So you've traveled the world and you're doing this work. Before we get into the work, we want to hear what you hear. So I ask you to share a word, a phrase, or a saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and why or how you came to value it as a Glocal speak.
Oh, wow. Huh. I'm laughing because DC definitely has some local speech. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Now that you're
exactly.
asking me or putting me on the spot, I'm like, what would I say?
Oh yeah, there's so much DC. I can rattle them off.
Oh my goodness. Okay, wait, let's see. I don't cave under pressure. Let's see, I can do this. What is something I say all the time? You know what? Y'all.
Okay,
I,
right.
y'all is definitely a global word
Yeah.
because it's said, I mean, I don't hear people saying it in other countries, but when you say y'all anywhere in the United States, everybody knows what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. It's so funny you say that because I was literally thinking yesterday. I was like, I often just on the word y'all, like literally, I was thinking on the word y'all. I was thinking maybe thinking of writing or something like that, but I was literally like thinking about the word y'all. So that's so funny. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, y'all.
Right. From DC to Brooklyn, it doesn't
Uh-huh.
matter wherever you
Yeah.
go.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, good. So that's a great local speak. We know it, we understand it, and it says a lot. Okay, so let's get to ancestry. So you were this product manager, and you were, working for multinational corporations, doing that kind of work, and then you had a brainchild. How did ancestry become a reality, or African ancestry? Let me just make sure. African ancestry. How did African ancestry become your brainchild?
Well, okay, so I'm not going to take credit for the idea. My cousin, so I have a cousin that I'm very close to. She is a narrative personality psychologist. She's a full professor at Howard University. And she was doing some research with Dr. Rick Kittles, who is my business partner, on the psychological impact of people knowing where they're from in Africa. This was before any company was formed. He was building the database, and so she was collaborating with him on research. And she knew that he wanted to commercialize the research. So she introduced the two of us. And your family is your biggest champion. She's like, oh, my cousin knows how to start businesses. She can help you. And so Dr. Kittles and I were introduced and had several meetings, and we decided to partner. And I would commercialize his research and make it available to the world because as a researcher, he's in the weeds, he's in the analysis, he's not thinking about everybody else. But when the community found out that he was able to identify African ancestry, he got inundated with requests to
Mm,
do it for
mhm,
them.
mhm,
And so this takes you back to economics, Florence, because I was studying economics, and the only thing I really understood well during my economics training, unfortunately, was supply and demand.
mhm,
When there's a demand, the market creates a supply to meet it, right? And so
mhm,
there was this demand by people for a way to know where in Africa they come from. And so Dr. Kittles and I created African Ancestry to meet that demand. So the community created African Ancestry.
mm, mhm, mhm,
That's
mhm.
what I
Okay.
like to say. And I was attracted to the idea not because I wondered where I was from or not because I had done all this family research. It was none of that. For me, it was the opportunity to use the skill set that my parents and I had invested in, right?
Mhm, mhm,
To create something that has never existed before. Because when you work at these big companies, you're not inventing anything new. You're not developing anything new. it's a new flavor.
Right.
Or, you put cheesecake in a bite form instead of in a pan form. Or, you put some bubbles in the dish liquid. It's not, nothing's new. But
Hmm.
this idea of a DNA product that can tell Black people or anybody where exactly in Africa they come from was brand new. So as a marketer, as a product creator, that was a no-brainer. But then most of all, to do it for the group of people that I'm passionate about.
Hmm. Hmm.
That was what solidified the decision to work with Dr. Kittles to create African Ancestry.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So how do you commercialize his research? So he's doing this research. So he's going back and forth to different African countries, I'm assuming. I mean, I don't know how a researcher or a geneticist, or is he a geneticist?
He is a geneticist.
Yeah.
So
So,
he was collecting data. So
okay.
he collected data from various sources and resources, some on the continent, some that was already in the public domain, a lot of research partnerships. He didn't do a great deal of travel back and forth, but he was collecting the data and analyzing it.
Hmm.
So when you want to commercialize that, you have to create a way for people to give you their data,
Hmm.
and then you have to package the results in a way that's meaningful for them to understand. And so
Right.
that's what I did. I
Hmm.
created the test kit and how the collection process. So the product and the process.
Hmm.
We're going to make this available to people, so they have to have a place to come. So there has to be a website, right? Or there has to be an order form, or what,
Hmm.
I'm dating myself now, but um, and then what are we going to send them? Order form,
Right.
no such thing anymore. But how are we going to collect their money? What are we going
Yeah.
to send them?
Yeah.
Where are they going to send it back? How are we going to get it from the mailbox to the lab?
Right.
All those types of things. And then after, how much time is that going to take? And then once we get the answer, how are we going to give them the answer? And then, which we hadn't always, I don't think I necessarily thought of initially, how are we going to support people once they have the answer, if they've got all these questions? And
Hmm.
so that is the thought process, the planning process is creating that whole chain of events and tools along the way to make it happen.
I get it. I get it. I get it. So this is back in 2000, almost 20 years. Wow,
Yep.
20 years of data. So you have 20 years of people coming to you and saying they want to know where they're from, and you have data from across Africa that is feeding people with information. So what did you so tell us how you figured out how to package it in a way to continue to bring people, because that's ultimately what has brought more people to you, is that the information
Mm-hmm.
that people had and the support I think that they had after is motivating others to come. How did you crack that nut?
Still trying to crack that nut, Florence. We went very grassroots. Our approach was grassroots by default because Dr. Kittles and I self funded the company.
Mm, mm-hmm.
So this was before the days of incubators and pitch competitions and all that kind of stuff. We just were like, we'll put our money in here. And we had the critical part, we had the database
Yeah.
of African lineages. That was the most expensive part of the equation. And
Mm-hmm.
so we took a very grassroots approach. So it was strictly PR. We were able to get media coverage because it was a novel idea. People were calling it the 21st century roots. We got LeVar Burton to take the test for us. So then we said,
Mm.
we could tell Kunta Kinte where he's really from.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
that.
we did a lot of traveling and
Yeah.
speaking in churches and centers and living rooms and just very, very grassroots. And so our business grew by word of mouth, which was important because imagine 20 years ago, almost, telling people, give us your DNA
Right.
and we're going to tell you where you're from in Africa. First of all, they're not giving you their DNA. Second of all, they don't care where they're from in Africa. And third of all, that's not possible. Y'all can't do that. So it has been a very long process of building credibility,
Mm-hmm.
building trust,
Mm-hmm.
and quite honestly, grinding, like just sweat,
Yeah.
sweat
Yeah.
equity put
Right.
into it. Now, today, we've got so many more tools at our disposal. We've got
Sure.
Facebook
Yeah.
digital
Right.
advertising, and
Right.
you can do your own, you can do videos yourself and post them on YouTube, and you can host groups. And but to get to this point took a lot of being at festivals, just putting ourselves physically in front of people so that they could see and touch us and judge for themselves if we were legit and if we were telling the truth. And yeah, this is real. And understanding so much education. That's the other major part, is educating the community. So one of the things that we don't talk about, Florence, that African ancestry has done is increase the genetic literacy of Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Because before we start, first of all, none of these other companies existed when we started. And then, second of all, the only time we were talking about DNA was either to incarcerate us or to get us off of being wrongfully incarcerated. Anything else related to us in that way was also negative. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment, like there just was so much rightful distrust of how science handles the very important personal data of Black people. And so we had to do a lot of education, which set the stage for these other companies who then decided, oh, well, I guess Black people are important. They didn't have as much of a hurdle
Mm-hmm.
because we had already started the conversation.
Sure. 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 So speaking of that and that apprehension, privacy. So I think that's another roadblock that a lot of people are like, oh, if it gets out there, what's going to happen? Who's going to, they're going to come for me, that kind of thing. So how have you and how do you deal with the privacy aspect?
So officially, the way we deal with it is African ancestry has never and still does not sell or share our customers' personal, financial, or genetic information. So everybody whose DNA is sent to us can be assured that their DNA is destroyed after we determine a result.
Mm-hmm.
That has been the cornerstone of our company. So that means that we don't have a database of our customers' genetic information.
Mm.
There's nothing to sell to pharmaceutical companies. There's nothing to research. It doesn't exist because we destroyed it, because we're Black people. And Dr. Kittles is a Black researcher, and we understood our consumer, our customer, and we knew that if we didn't do that,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be sitting here talking 19 years later. But again, that's where the credibility and the trust, all that is
Yeah.
what we had to build over
Sure.
years
Sure.
to make people comfortable. Now, I think that I think it's a valid concern. What are you going to do with my DNA? And you should definitely ask the question. And I think people should ask the question of the white companies too,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because that question is
Yeah.
asked of the Black
Right.
company all the time, and it's not often asked of the
Right.
white company. So I'm glad that people are starting to expand their who they question. But unofficially, Florence, what I tell people is it really depends on how important the information is to you. Because when you go give blood, you don't ask, what are you doing with my DNA?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you do a drug test at your job, you don't ask, what are you going to do with my DNA?
Mm-hmm.
When it's something that's important to you, you don't even think to ask.
Right.
It's important, you want it, and so it doesn't even dawn on you that there should be a limitation between you and getting what you want.
Mm-hmm. 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 I think this kind of starts to straddle that informed consent, dialogues that we're starting to have. Like, how informed are you about where and who and how you are treating and understanding your body and your body byproducts?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And it's good to see that people are becoming increasingly aware. But I just want to encourage people who are thinking about it, and the privacy part is what's keeping them from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Your DNA is already out there. If you've been in the military, if you've given blood, like, don't let that you from getting something that could transform your life and something that's very important and central and critical to your identity. Don't let that fear. And one of the things that people can do, Florence, is just not give their name. Like I've had a
Mm,
number of people
yeah.
who when we used to use paper back in the
Hmm.
day, I was like, don't put your name. I don't care what your name is. I don't need to know who you are.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And then if something were to happen, or if you are working with a company that, doesn't honor your consent, then at least they don't know who you are.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. 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 But just thinking about where this kind of technology and where this information could be helpful, so you've had all this data on Black people in particular, and we could have more information on us, to be quite honest. We know that studies kind of pass us by and things like that. What are your thoughts on how potentially, and I know your policy is that, but will there ever be a time where you do ask for consent so that you can support researchers and research and medical breakthroughs and things like that with your information?
I certainly hope so. That's my vision,
Mm,
because we have built up the trust and credibility.
yeah,
We've proven to Black people that we're not here to exploit us,
yeah,
ourselves. It talking about us and them, right? It
yeah,
We are us. Like it, we are African. We are our customers. It's one big family, and so
right,
I think that we're in a unique position to be able to work with Black scientists and Black researchers to help Black people be in better control or be better informed about their physical well-being. We're kind of focused on your psychological well-being right
right,
now,
right,
but we
right,
there's a huge
exactly.
opportunity with their physical well-being.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, we'll support you as much as we can to get to those points. Yeah. So your relationship now, see, this has been mostly U.S. facing, obviously, because this is where most people do not know so much about where they're
Right.
from. But me being from Ghana, knowing my parents and probably my grandparents where they're from, there's a huge opportunity, I'm thinking, for Africans to also know more about their ancestry because we didn't have borders when my ancestors were around, and now we do. So what is your rollout, and how are you approaching Africans and Caribbeans and other Black people of the diaspora in terms of being able to reach them and give them data?
So you're right. We are focused primarily on the United States. Our next area of focus is the Caribbean, Canada,
Hmm.
Europe,
Okay.
places where enslaved Africans were taken to.
Hmm.
And then our focus on Africa is more one of helping people get to Africa to explore the cultures that they share
Mm.
ancestry with, rather than helping Africans on the continent learn more about their ancestry there.
Okay.
I think that's been our rollout because it's more consistent with our mission. We really were answering the question, we started off answering the question, where were my people before the slave trade?
Got it. Got it.
But
Mhm.
the more that I travel the continent and the more that other mainstream companies are going into the continent to collect the DNA of Africans, the more I hear continental Africans saying, "Well, I want to know more about where I'm from." So I agree that there is an opportunity. I'm seeing the other companies exploring that area, but we're not we're not big enough, quite honestly,
Got it.
to do that right now. And there's still so much that has to be done with folks who have no clue.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I absolutely get it and understand it. So you bootstrapped it. And then, speaking of, bigger and that kind of thing, where have you sought investors? Are you now have investors, or it's still been a business that makes its money, puts it back in the money, puts it back in the business and grows that way?
Yeah, we're still privately held. We have
Okay.
not taken any investments. I like to say that Chadwick Boseman was an investor because in 2018, the week that Black Panther was going to launch, in every interview he did, he talked about AfricanAncestry.com and how he had taken our test. So I feel like he was our He was our investor. And now he's
Wow,
an angel
yes,
investor, right? He was our angel investor. He just,
sure.
without us even knowing, he put us on the map during one of the most, oh, what is the
It
word? I
was
don't even know the word.
transformational. It was a transformational
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
periods. Yeah,
Mhm.
in for Black American culture or for Black
Yeah.
culture worldwide, global Black
Yes.
culture.
Mhm.
So that happened in 2018, and we got that investment from him. But no, we don't have any investors. We're just growing the company
Okay.
ourselves. Because you know what happens when
Mhm.
you take investors, then you have to start doing what they want to do, what they want you to do, and you lose a lot of control. And we've
Yeah.
just been very careful about
Yeah.
guarding our reputation.
Yeah, yeah. What about licensing your technology? Is that a potential stream of income or training geneticists on your product? So just I'm just trying to think of how because you have this gem and I
Hmm.
absolutely understand where you're coming from with, yeah, because special interests in this space are huge. Like there's a huge corrupt force that could make that happen. But what could be because I want Black businesses to be global businesses and grow. And I know how difficult it is when you are in the, first of all, this kind of space where it's a kind of a touchy medical health personal space. But then there's also this, and I guess it's also based on demand. Like, do we have a lot of demand outside? Do we have a lot of demand for geneticists? Like, but if we don't have a thought of how we get them trained or anything like that, then maybe people won't even think about it. So are there any thoughts on different ways to grow and disseminate your business model or your way to grow the understanding and knowing that
Hmm.
people gain?
Hmm. Hmm. I do think so. I think that more so than licensing technology, it would be you'd have to license our database. You have to
Mm,
license access to our database. But I
hmm.
think that, as we expand globally, there's certainly an opportunity to grow faster by partnering with other businesses in
Mm,
other countries,
hmm, hmm.
grow faster together, right? So
Yeah.
instead of us trying to start up in another
Yeah.
country, we could partner with an existing company that's already there and
Sure.
functioning well.
Sure.
Hmm.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
And then
That's
I
a
think we could also grow through other products.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things a friend of mine, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, was investing in yeah, I guess a testing facility, but basically was paternity, and that was in Nigeria. So people who wanted to, it's kind of a high-end product, but yeah, I see where that kind of partnership can bring a whole nother dimension into the understanding of genetics. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you just diversify.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. How exciting. Exciting. So let me take, thinking of diversifying, I have my mindset hack question. So we want to know what is your favorite or an innovative mindset hack that you can imagine or one that you know of, one that you practice?
Oh, I need to hear all the answers from previous people so that I know how to hack my mindset because that is a struggle, Florence. Um, Look, I want to copy off of somebody else's answer. You know,
Are you a workaholic?
yes, ma'am. So yeah, you know what it is? This is what I'm practicing now.
Okay.
This is my current mindset hack.
Okay.
Being still.
Ah, yes. That's a perfect one. Mm-hmm.
Just stopping at random times, points in the day, and just being still.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about how, and this is not at all scientific, but I've been grinding since 2003. And over the course of that time, I've had some breakdowns. I've broken a leg, had torn a ligament in my shoulder. And each of those times, I realized that I just kept going and going and going and didn't
Mm.
listen to my body. And then my body was like, okay, cool. You don't have to listen. We got this. And it'll shut down.
Yeah.
And so I just the other day was thinking our minds must be like that too. If you're
Yes.
constantly thinking and your mind is going, 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 I always have something on in the background. I'm always thinking there's going to be a breakdown. It just seems like a natural next step that if you don't stop, and give it time to rest, that at some point you're going to feel the effects of that. So I've been practicing just being still.
That's a perfect one. That's a good hack. Just be still. And that's definitely a hack. And literally,
And it's hard too. It's really hard.
I can imagine. But since a few years ago, I went to, and I say this a lot, I went to India on a yoga retreat.
Mhm.
And this is when I finally really learned and understood meditation. And so just having that in and not even, my stillness isn't even necessarily a meditation. It is just as you said, like nothing is on and I'm just still. And so, yeah, I agree with you. It makes a world of difference. So we like that one.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. I hope it works. I'm a newbie at this hack, so we'll
Oh,
see.
it
I'll keep you
does.
posted.
It does. It does. You'll enjoy it. Yeah, please do keep us informed of it. You'll enjoy it. Okay, so then we talked a little bit about what's next, but what is next for African ancestry? What is next? What's new? What's trending? Where are you going?
We're going to Africa.
Yay.
So we launched African Ancestry Family Reunions
Oh,
in
cool.
at the very end of 2019 in Ghana, actually,
Okay.
in
Your return.
December 2019. Yeah,
Okay.
and then we all know what happened at the beginning of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2021, April 2021, we started. We had our first one, African Ancestry Family Reunion to Sierra Leone, because the
Mm.
country of Sierra Leone is now giving citizenship to DNA trace descendants
Oh,
who can
wow.
trace a maternal or paternal lineage back to Sierra Leone.
Okay.
And so we've taken two family groups there, and by the African ancestry family, I mean anybody who has taken an African ancestry test. And so we've seen almost 200 people get citizenship in Sierra Leone.
Wow.
And so that has sparked an interest. I mean, people already wanted to travel, or at
Yeah.
least they said they did.
Yeah.
But with the year of return and sort of Africa's popularity increasing, more
Sure.
and more people, and then the citizenship thing during a time where Black people are questioning why they
Mm-hmm.
live in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
that has really made people eager to explore. And so we're looking at having a reunion in Cameroon, a reunion
Lovely.
in Ghana, and we also have Senegal and Burkina Faso in our plans. So that's what's next for us most immediately is
Yay.
getting more people on the continent.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. That's a great idea. And it's a great, I think that, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So how are you documenting? Are you doing any partnerships with media or is it just kind of everyone's social media? Are you doing any documenting on these trips?
Well, funny you should ask. So we
Hmm.
did do a little short documentary on the Sierra Leone trip
Okay.
that we aired. I have
Okay.
air quotes that we aired in November.
Okay.
And so on every trip, we are taking a videographer, but we don't yet have any media partnerships. And so
Okay. Something to think about.
that's certainly a possibility.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. So where can people see that documentary on your website?
Yeah, that's actually on our YouTube channel. If you go to
Okay.
African Ancestry's YouTube channel, you can see the documentary there.
Okay.
It's short.
Wonderful.
It's like about 10 minutes. And
Okay.
it's incredible to actually go back with people to a place that they've never been to before, but that is the place that their ancestors came from. I can't even begin to tell you how powerful watching that
Mm-hmm.
experience is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just
I
it's
can imagine. I can imagine.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
very
awesome. That's
powerful.
Thank you for that work because thank you for all of this. It's so awesome. Like we know you're a workaholic and need to be still sometimes, but so you said you're a workaholic. So so we like to know a little bit more about you when you're not doing African ancestry. So who is Gina? Is she a watcher, a reader, or a listener? What's your favorite?
I'm a listener. Music makes me
Okay.
happy,
Okay. And
and so
nice.
I would say listener.
What are some of your favorite listens?
Whew. Well, I have to say I'm a 20th century hip hop loving chick. So I'm old school
Okay.
all the way, old school hip hop. We already talked about go-go. I just,
Yep.
can't keep still with go-go. But I also like to listen to jazz musicians like
Mm.
Lonnie Liston Smith and Pharoah
Mhm.
Saunders and
Mhm.
Sun Ra and Roy Ayers. I don't know. There's something about the jazz greats that is very soothing, but they were also very connected spiritually, I think, in their work. And it comes through very clearly in some of their music. So I'm all over
Mhm.
the place, but most of the time I'm listening to old school hip hop. I cannot lie. Most of the
Okay.
time, that's what I'm
Okay,
listening to.
okay, okay, nice. It's two ends. It's like the those that sampled those because a lot of old school hip hop sampled those jazz greats. So it makes
Exactly,
sense the progression
exactly.
of your listening ear. Nice, nice,
And
nice,
given
nice.
my age, my parents were listening to the people that are being sampled. So as a
Uh-huh.
kid,
You heard
my
it.
music was the music that was being sampled. Yeah. So
Right,
it's
right,
very
right.
circular to your point.
Yeah, yeah, it is. How nice, how lovely. Gina, this has been great. I'm so happy to been able to get you and sit with you and help with a little moment of stillness, even though we're talking.
No, it's quite nice. And your voice is very soothing. I have to say, nothing is more fulfilling than the way we met. So I was in
Oh,
Ghana, just
yeah.
kind of chilling after the Sierra Leone family reunion. I went to
Oh,
Ghana
okay,
for
okay.
another event and then just stayed extra days with Kwaku,
Uh-huh.
who is a alum,
Yes.
and just ran into you. And he's like, wait a minute, we're all Stanford. And
Yeah.
to be talking to you now and to see other connections that we have is very fulfilling. And it's one of the things that makes my work the most fun because most of the time it's just sitting in front of a computer. But to be able to have these types of experiences also makes it worthwhile. So thank
Yay.
you.
Yes, thank you too. Thank you, thank you. So we are definitely putting all of your information in our show notes, your africanentry.com. We're going to put the YouTube channel. Any other shout outs you want to give before we sign off?
Oh man, no, that's too much pressure. Yes, there is another shout out. I want to shout out the entire African ancestry team because I'm the one who gets to come and chill with
Yeah.
folks and talk about the work. And I don't do it by myself. And as we have grown as a company, our team has grown. And so there's so many things that I don't have to do now because I have a team of people to help manage the business and they do an outstanding job. And so I want to shout them out because without them, we wouldn't be able to have these types of conversations.
Okay, that's spoken like a really good boss. Thank you, boss. We appreciate that. All right, folks, this has been another episode of Glocal Citizens. You can catch us with new episodes every Tuesday at www.glocalcitizenspod.com and wherever you get your podcast. Please share, like, subscribe, and send us a note. Check out our show notes for sure because they're good show notes. And until next time, bye for now.